Don't go to the wedding. Check your husband's office. At first, I thought it was a prank, but when I saw the photos, I was left speechless. Hi there. My name is Mia, and I've been through more than most could ever imagine. I'm just an ordinary woman, living an ordinary life, or so I thought, until everything I trusted fell apart in one moment. My story is about betrayal, the kind you never see coming, even from the people you love most. Today, I'm going to take you through a journey of heartbreak, discovery, and ultimately, strength. So stick with me until the end to see how I found my way out of the darkness and reclaimed my life. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It'll give me the motivation to bring you even more stories just like this one. It was supposed to be a day of celebration. My brother Max was getting married. The whole family had gathered for this special day, and I was getting ready to watch him walk down the aisle with the love of his life, Emily. But just hours before the ceremony, I received a message that would change everything. The message was brief from an unknown number. Don't go to your brother's wedding. Check your husband's office. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Maybe one of my friends playing a joke, trying to throw me off. But something about it felt different. There was an unease that crept over me, something that I couldn't shake. I shook my head, telling myself it was just a mistake. Max had always been my golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. He was everything I could hope for in a little brother, charming, charismatic, and the life of every party. I had watched him grow up, always so full of life, always so eager to be happy with Emily, and I was excited for them both. But as I stood there in front of the mirror, adjusting the last little creases in my dress, my mind kept returning to that message. My husband, Adam, had left earlier that morning, saying he had an important meeting. He promised he'd be back in time for the wedding, but why hadn't he called? Why did the message feel like something was off? I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what was going on. I tried to call Adam, but he didn't answer. That tight knot in my stomach only grew. So I made a decision. A quick check wouldn't hurt, right? I decided to go to Adam's office. The thought felt ridiculous. Who would hide anything there? Adam and I had been married for 8 years, and our relationship had always felt solid. Trust was the foundation. We had a perfect life. At least, that's what I thought. But now I wasn't sure. I grabbed the spare key that Adam had once made just in case of emergencies. He had mentioned it in passing, saying it would be useful if we were locked out. The key was hidden in a small wooden box we kept in the closet, alongside old souvenirs from our early years together. My hands trembled as I grabbed it. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I couldn't stop the mounting dread in my chest. My heart pounded as if it knew something my mind wasn't yet prepared to face. The drive to his office wasn't long, but each second felt like an eternity. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a feeling, just a bad thought. But then, why couldn't I shake the feeling that something was off? I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. I prided myself on my level-headedness, but this was different. Something in the pit of my stomach told me I wasn't being paranoid. As I approached the office building, a sleek, modern glass tower in the heart of downtown, the weight of the situation settled even deeper into my bones. Adam's office was on the 15th floor, a prime location just like everything about his life. Neat, calculated, organized. And that's how I imagined his life, perfectly aligned and without surprises. Or so I thought. I parked the car and stared at the building for a long moment before getting out. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt unnervingly quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. When the elevator doors opened, the cool, air-conditioned air hit me like a wave, but it did nothing to calm the chaos churning inside me. The hallways were pristine, lined with dark wood and glass, nothing out of the ordinary. Adam's office door was slightly ajar, a small, inconspicuous gap, just wide enough for me to slip through unnoticed. I could hear the soft hum of the lights overhead and the faint sound of the air conditioning. As I stepped inside, I almost expected the familiar smell of leather-bound books, wood polish, and the slightly musky scent of his aftershave. It was the scent of comfort, of a life I had come to know as my own. But something felt off. The air seemed heavier, thicker than usual. I didn't know what it was, but the office felt wrong. The office was the same, neat, organized, just like Adam always liked it. His desk, perfectly aligned with the rest of the furniture, looked as though it had been arranged with military precision. There was no mess, no clutter, only neatly stacked papers, an expensive pen set, and his laptop still open to some financial spreadsheet. But then my eyes landed on something that made my heart drop. A woman's handbag open on his desk. The sight hit me like a ton of bricks. I recognized it immediately. It was Emily's. My brother's fiancée. What was her bag doing here? My breath caught in my throat. A tight knot twisted in my stomach, pulling at the edges of my sanity. I thought of the last time I'd seen Emily, bright, happy, full of life, preparing for her wedding to Max. I remembered the way she'd smiled at me, how her eyes lit up when she spoke about their future. Emily had always been like a sister to me. And now here I was, standing in Adam's office with her purse carelessly discarded on his desk. How did it get here? And why? I felt the floor beneath me shift as I walked closer. Each step felt heavier, as though the air itself had become thicker, more suffocating. My pulse pounded in my ears as I reached for the purse, my fingers trembling with a mix of dread and anticipation. I hesitated for a moment before lifting the bag, my heart racing. As I opened it, a series of photos spilled out, a stack of photographs, their glossy edges catching the light. They were from a beach vacation, one I didn't recognize. Adam and Emily. They were together in every single one. Laughing, holding hands, their chemistry undeniable. A chill ran down my spine as the truth started to sink in. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Everything in my mind was spinning, colliding into each other like a jigsaw puzzle coming apart. Adam and Emily together? This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something far worse. I could hardly process what I was seeing. The photos were so intimate, so filled with joy. They looked so natural, so happy. And in each one, Adam's smile seemed genuine, like he was in love. I stumbled backward, the edge of the desk digging into my legs as my world shattered. How long had this been going on? Was it one night? A secret tryst? Or had it been something much deeper, something I had never suspected? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. In the midst of the chaos, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Max. Where are you? The ceremony is starting soon. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long moment, but the words seemed to blur. My mind was no longer focused on Max or the wedding. It was trapped in the vortex of what I had just uncovered. I reached back into the purse, my hand shaking, and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a handwritten note, the ink slightly smudged. I can't stop thinking about you. I know this isn't right, but I need you more than anything. We can't keep pretending. I want you. Only you. I'll figure it out, I swear. The words felt like a punch to my gut. My vision blurred as tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. Adam had written this. He had written it to Emily, to my brother's fiancée. I looked around the office, feeling a sickening sense of disorientation. Everything in this room, the books, the awards on the shelves, the framed photos of our vacations and family gatherings seemed like a lie. A cruel, twisted illusion that I had been living in for 8 years. I had trusted him. And now I didn't know what was real anymore. Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. My mind raced with anger, confusion, and betrayal. How could Adam? How could Emily? The two people I trusted the most in my life, and they were involved in something behind my back. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating me. It felt as though the walls were closing in, and I was drowning in the sheer impossibility of the situation. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, was a lie. I couldn't sit back and do nothing. I had to tell Max. But not here, not at the wedding. It would ruin everything, and I couldn't bear to do that, especially not in front of family and friends. But I couldn't let Emily walk down that aisle, not knowing what I knew. The truth had to come out. Max deserved to know the betrayal he was about to walk into. I texted Max to meet me outside before the ceremony began. My hands were shaking as I typed, and my heart pounded in my chest. The words seemed too simple for the gravity of the situation, yet nothing could express the turmoil I felt. Meet me outside before the ceremony. It's urgent. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, my thumb trembling as it left the screen. I stood by the large glass windows, gazing out at the busy streets below. The city felt distant, cold, and unfamiliar to me in that moment. The laughter and chatter inside the venue echoed down the hall, the sounds of celebration mocking the storm brewing inside me. I waited, tapping my foot nervously on the polished floor. I glanced at the clock. Max would be here soon. When he arrived, I could see the worry in his eyes immediately. His tuxedo was perfectly pressed, his hair perfectly styled, but there was something in his posture, his unease that matched mine. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight, as though he knew something was wrong but couldn't put his finger on it. "What's going on, Mia? Why aren't you inside getting ready?" he asked, his voice soft but edged with concern. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He could sense that something was off, but I knew this wasn't just another one of those small pre-wedding jitters. It was bigger than that. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pulled out the photos and handed them to him without a word. My fingers felt numb, like I was doing this on autopilot, as if my body had taken control while my mind was still reeling. His eyes darted over the photos, confusion clouding his face at first. He didn't understand. How could he? The photos were so innocent-looking at first glance, just a couple enjoying their vacation together. But then, the more he flipped through the stack, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his mind. The color drained from his face. His hands started to shake. "Is this real?" he whispered. His voice cracked as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of their implications. I took a shaky breath and spoke softly, trying to steady my voice. "I wish it weren't," I said, my voice breaking. The truth felt like a sharp blade lodged deep in my chest, twisting with every word. "But I found this in Adam's office. I don't know what to do, Max. I can't let you go through with this wedding." My chest tightened as I said it, the finality of the words cutting deeper than I anticipated. Max stood still, staring at the photos, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. His eyes darted from one picture to the next, as if hoping, praying, that he'd misinterpreted something. His body was frozen in disbelief, and I could feel the tension rising in the air. I could hear his heartbeat pounding from across the space, mirroring my own. After what felt like an eternity, he finally looked up at me. His expression was a mixture of hurt and disbelief, a churning storm of emotions that I could never have prepared for. "You're right," he said, his voice tight, controlled, but beneath it was a flicker of something far deeper, pain. "I can't marry her after this." His words hit me harder than I expected. The anger, the betrayal, it all swirled together, mixing with the relief of knowing that I hadn't been alone in this, that Max wasn't going to blindly walk into the lie. But even as I felt that small bit of comfort, another thought crashed through my mind. What now? How were we supposed to move forward? The wedding was about to begin. The guests were already seated, and the tension was thick in the air. What would we do with this knowledge now that it was out in the open? Max's eyes never left the photos. His gaze flickered back to me, and there was a moment, just a brief moment, where I saw him crumble inside. He let out a long, shaky breath. "I don't know what to say. What happens now, Mia?" His voice was quieter now, more uncertain. The man who had walked in with confidence was now completely broken, shattered by the truth. I shook my head, the words escaping me. How could I explain the weight of everything I had just learned? How could I help him process the depth of this betrayal? There was no easy answer. "We need to tell Emily," I said, the words coming out more firm than I felt. "She needs to know the truth, Max. She can't go through with this either. Not after everything we've found." Max flinched at the thought. "I don't know if I can do that. The wedding, the family, it's all set up. We can't just stop it, can we?" His voice wavered, caught between loyalty to his family and the pain of what he had just uncovered. "We can't pretend anymore, Max," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just about stopping the wedding. It's about stopping the lies before they hurt anyone else. It's about protecting everyone from more pain." I could see the turmoil in his eyes, the internal battle he was facing. The burden of knowing the truth, the weight of exposing it, was suffocating him. But there was also a flicker of determination that started to grow. Max wasn't the type to run away from something once he knew it was right. And this was something that had to be confronted. Max clenched his fists at his sides. "You're right," he said again, his voice firmer this time. "I can't marry her after this. I won't be part of this lie." We stood there in silence for a few moments, the reality of what we were about to do settling heavily on both of us. Max was the one who finally broke the silence. "Let's go tell her. Let's stop this before it goes any further." My heart clenched as I nodded. The wedding, the life I had imagined for my brother, the trust one had placed in Emily, It was all falling apart. But at least, for once, we were doing the right thing. Max walked into the venue, his jaw set with determination, his steps firm. The clock was ticking, the moment of truth upon him. The ceremony was supposed to start in just minutes, but Max knew, deep in his bones, that there was no way he could let this wedding go on. Not when he knew what he knew. As he strode to the front of the room, the guests fell silent, their eyes following his every move. The room, once filled with the soft hum of pre-wedding chatter, now felt charged with an electric tension. People whispered among themselves, unsure of what was happening. Some wondered if it was all just a joke, others could feel the seriousness in the air. Emily, who had been waiting nervously at the altar, turned to him, her expression betraying confusion and disbelief. Her makeup, carefully applied for this day, now seemed to melt in the panic that overtook her. Max stood tall, his eyes locked with Emily's. She took a step towards him, her mouth opening as if to say something, but he didn't give her a chance to speak. "I know everything, Emily," Max said firmly, his voice cutting through the air. His words hung heavy in the room, the weight of them sinking into the guests who had been eagerly waiting for the vows. "I'm not marrying someone who's been lying to me. Not anymore." The words were simple, but they carried a finality to them that couldn't be undone. Emily's face twisted in anger, a fierce, almost animalistic expression taking over her features. For a brief second, she looked like she was going to lunge at him, her hands balling into fists. But then, as if realizing the futility of it all, she straightened up and turned away. Without another word, she stormed out of the venue, slamming the door behind her with such force that the sound reverberated through the hall. The guests were frozen. Some stood in disbelief, unsure of whether to move or speak. The air was thick with confusion, the tension palpable. The wedding that was meant to be a celebration had turned into a spectacle of unspoken betrayal. Max stood motionless, his eyes on the door where Emily had just left, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He wasn't backing down. The moment he had dreaded for so long had finally come. The truth had come out, and no amount of fear or uncertainty could make him go through with the charade. As for me, I watched from the back of the room, my heart beating rapidly in my chest. I had been part of this too, and now the truth had been laid bare for everyone to see. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for Max, but for all of us. I knew this was the hardest thing Max had ever done. To confront the woman he had been about to marry, to call off the wedding that had been months in the making, to stand up in front of all those people and tell the truth. It had to have felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. But despite everything, I felt a sense of pride for him. He wasn't going to let himself be a pawn in someone else's game, no matter how hard it was. He wasn't going to let his life be dictated by lies, by Emily, or by Emily's manipulation. But for me, the moment was far from over. I had a choice to make. Later, after the shock had settled and the guests slowly began to trickle out, Adam found me. His face was pale, his eyes full of panic. He had been trying to reach me all afternoon, but I hadn't answered his calls. Now he stood in front of me, his hands slightly trembling. "Mia, wait. I can explain," he said, his voice cracking as he took a step towards me. I crossed my arms, my heart still pounding in my chest. The rage and betrayal I felt earlier were slowly being replaced by a cold, unsettling calm. "Explain," I asked, my voice barely audible, but the coldness in it was unmistakable. "How could you explain this, Adam?" I gestured to the room, the evidence of the chaos that had just unfolded. "How could you explain the lies? The secrets? The betrayal?" He stepped closer, his face full of regret. "Mia, you have to understand. It wasn't like you think. Emily and I," he stopped, his words faltering as I held up my hand. "No," I said, my voice sharp. "I don't need to hear your excuses. I've heard enough of those. You've already lied to me for months. You lied to Max. You lied to everyone. And now you expect me to forgive you." I shook my head, my eyes locked on his with the intensity of my words. "I'm done, Adam. I trusted you and you betrayed me. You ruined everything." For a moment, there was silence. His face shifted, the color draining further, and his lips parted as if searching for something to say. But he said nothing. Instead, he turned away from me, walking slowly towards the door. As he left, he didn't look back. It was over. And as Adam disappeared into the hallway, I stood there, feeling the weight of everything wash over me. But unlike before, I didn't feel overwhelmed by the heaviness of it all. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. I wasn't tied to the lies anymore. I wasn't trapped in a marriage that had been built on falsehoods. I wasn't bound by the expectations of others. It was over. And in that moment, I knew this was my chance to start again, to rebuild my life and move on. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild my life. I sold the house Adam and I had shared, and I moved into a small apartment in a quiet part of town. I started focusing on my career, something I had neglected for too long. Max and I became closer than ever. We leaned on each other, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly living for myself. I didn't let the past define me anymore. I let it go and I embraced the future. The best was yet to come. So, what do you think? Has this story made you question trust, loyalty, and the courage it takes to break free from toxic situations? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your perspective, or even ask questions. Your feedback means a lot. And if you enjoyed this journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss out on the next exciting chapter. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end of the story. I truly appreciate your time and support.